there was a point where he was delusional and having kind of episodes that were related, but brushes with the law and flirting with kind of homelessness.
For decades, Ron Howard remained publicly respectful, while Hollywood shaped a carefully polished narrative around his relationship with Rob Reiner. He spoke kindly in interviews and avoided controversy, giving the impression of mutual admiration and trust. But behind that calm image, unresolved tensions quietly existed. Now, Ron Howard has finally revealed what truly happened between them, exposing private moments and uncomfortable truths that completely change how their long-standing connection is understood. The mask finally slips. Ron Howard has been called the nicest guy in Hollywood for over 5 decades. Variety once wrote that his father had the idea that little Ronnie Howard should play a good kid, not the wise guy type popular in those Dennis the Menace years. He has been known as nice ever since. The Orlando Sentinel called him Hollywood's Boy Scout. They said few faces carry a clearer message than Ron Howard's. He is mom and apple pie, Thanksgiving, and the 4th of July. He is an American icon. But here is what nobody tells you about being an American icon. You cannot crack. You cannot break. You cannot show the world that behind that perfect smile is a man who has spent his entire life terrified of falling apart. For years, Ron kept it all inside. The pressure of being America's favorite kid. The stress of transitioning from actor to director when everyone told him it was impossible. The guilt of watching his own brothers spiral into addiction while his career soared. He buried it all behind that famous grin. Then, on December 14th, 2025, Rob Reiner died at age 78. And something in Ron Howard finally shifted. Within hours of the news breaking, Ron posted a tribute that revealed more about their relationship than decades of interviews ever had. He wrote that their careers and lives intersected often over the decades, from Rob writing the pilot script for Happy Days, and then as they each shifted from acting careers into directing and producing. He called Rob a superlative filmmaker, a supportive colleague, and at all times a dedicated citizen. But it was what Ron said next that stunned everyone. He talked about connection, about understanding, about 2 men who had walked parallel paths through the most brutal industry on earth and somehow recognized something in each other that nobody else could see. The tragedy deepened when charges were filed against Nick Reiner, accused of killing his parents, Rob Reiner, and photographer-producer Michelle Singer Reiner. The entertainment world went silent. But Ron started speaking. In interviews following the tragedy, Ron reflected on how fragile the industry really is, how fast everything flips, how even the brightest careers are built on complicated bonds that the public never sees. His long silence did not fade. It cracked, and what came out carried serious weight. He hinted at memories tied directly to Rob Reiner, and suddenly people realized their connection ran deeper than anyone knew. Not just colleagues, not just peers, something heavier. There has to be a drive, and ambition has to move you to do that. He was talking about the fire that burns beneath the nice guy image, the same fire that burned in Rob Reiner. But to understand why this loss shattered Ron so completely, you have to go back to the very beginning, to a childhood that looked like a dream, but felt like a prison made of studio lights and scripted smiles. The Golden Cage. Ronald William Howard was born on March 1, 1954, in Duncan, Oklahoma. His parents met in a University of Oklahoma drama class. His father, Rance Howard, was a Depression-era farm boy whose passion for acting would change the course of their entire family history. His mother, Jean Spiegel Howard, was a trained actress from the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City, who put aside her own career to raise her sons. Before most kids knew what cameras even were, Ron was already under them. At just 18 months old, he appeared in Frontier Woman, filmed on the Chunky River in Mississippi. By age 2, he made his stage debut in The 7-Year Itch, in a summer stock production directed by his father. The family moved to California, and normal life disappeared fast. Auditions replaced playgrounds. Scripts replaced bikes. Sound stages replaced streets. While other kids lost teeth and played outside, Ron memorized lines like, "It was nothing." Then everything exploded. On October 3, 1960, The Andy Griffith Show premiered, and 6-year-old Ronnie Howard became America's favorite kid overnight. Cast as Opie Taylor, the adorable son of Sheriff Andy Taylor, he became the symbol of innocence, the face families trusted. But behind that smile was a quiet boy doing homework in tiny studio rooms while laughter drifted in from outside. Ron later revealed that the crew were salty old characters who swore like sailors and drank like fishes. His eyes were always burning from cigarette smoke. Fame looked warm on screen, but cold up close. His father, Rance, fought to protect him. He went to Andy Griffith himself and made a suggestion that would shape Ron's entire career. Ron revealed on Conan O'Brien's podcast that his dad quietly approached Andy and said he saw they were writing Opie kind of like the Rusty Hamer character on Danny Thomas, where he is a wise guy. And his dad said Ronnie can do that and everything, but what if he actually respected his father? Andy thought about it, went back to the writers, and changed the whole dynamic of the show. Rance Howard's rule was simple: never act cute, just act honest. That lesson stuck forever, but it did not erase the cost. At the same time, another kid was rising in the same Hollywood machine. Rob Reiner, born March 6, 1947, in the Bronx, was the son of comedy legend Carl Reiner. His family moved to Los Angeles in 1959, and Rob grew up surrounded by the biggest names in entertainment. Same pressure, same eyes watching, same quiet weight that never really leaves. One moment from The Music Man in 1962 says it all about the pressure Ron faced. 8-year-old Ron froze during a dance scene. Shirley Jones, his co-star, later confirmed what happened in an interview. She said he was so nervous about being able to dance in Gary, Indiana. He kept saying, "I cannot do it, Shirley. I cannot do it." And she told him, "Yes, you can do it." His mother was never on set, only his father, Rance. And Rance would sit with him for a few minutes and just talk to him, quietly and nicely. Shirley described it as so loving and nice. Ron later admitted he is basically tone-deaf and has 2 left feet. It took extensive coaching just to get a usable recording from the young boy. Years later, Ron would describe his childhood as a golden cage, safe but painfully isolating. He told the Fort Worth Star-Telegram that he always tries to discourage parents from putting their children in this business. He said he is one of the few child actors who got through it without a lot of anger and resentment. Most child actors are not taught how to act. They are taught how to perform. They are like trained animals. That is why Ron's empathy for Rob Reiner cuts so deep now. Both grew up in the spotlight. Both had guiding fathers. Both learned early that behind every perfect scene is a child struggling to breathe. And neither of them ever forgot it. Trapped in time. Those quiet anxieties never left Ron Howard. He just learned how to hide them behind that calm smile everyone trusted. Confidence became a performance, a shield, his secret armor in a business packed with egos and non-stop expectations. While others like Rob Reiner grabbed attention by being loud and bold, Ron played it cool, watching, learning, studying the room. Then, in 1974, everything shifted fast. Here is something most people do not know. Rob Reiner co-wrote the pilot episode of Happy Days. The episode, called All the Way, that aired on January 15, 1974, was written by Rob Reiner, along with Phil Mishkin and Gary Marshall. The man who would become Ron's mirror in so many ways helped launch the very show that would define Ron's young adult life. But Ron did not take the role of Richie Cunningham for the reasons everyone thinks. In a 1984 Washington Post interview, he revealed the dark truth. The Vietnam War was still going on, and he had a lousy draft number. He read that if your job could be directly related to the employment of 30 or more people, that would be a deferment. He thought, if this series goes, he could get that deferment. Ron told Virgin Radio that he did not want to go to Vietnam, nor did he want to flee the country. He was really unsure what to do. But it is odd to think that fear and terror actually launched him in the direction of a show that would ultimately change his life. The draft ended just months after the show began. But Ron was locked in. As Richie Cunningham, he became the perfect boy next door. Polite, loyal, safe, fans loved it. But behind the scenes, the walls started closing in. Then came Fonzie. In their 2021 memoir, The Boys, Ron revealed what really happened. He wrote that the biggest stressor of all was Fonzie. Not Henry Winkler, but Fonzie, the character. It did not escape his notice that as the season went on, the Fonz was getting more and more screen time. He did not handle his stress well. He probably would have benefited from seeing a psychotherapist. Instead, he kept everything inside. Then he started breaking out in eczema rashes all over his body, most acutely on his eyelids. And his hair started thinning. It started coming out in alarming clumps during this time. America's wholesome boy next door was losing his hair from stress at 23 years old. And nobody knew. Then ABC wanted to rename the show Fonzie's Happy Days. Ron's response shocked everyone. In a 2025 Vulture interview, he admitted he never ever challenged what they were doing creatively. It made perfect sense that you would build the Fonzie character and maximize that. But the optics of now being in a show called Fonzie's Happy Days, his ego would not allow for that. He was not bluffing. He would have left. Even Henry Winkler opposed the change. He told the network that if they did that, it would be an insult to everybody he was working with. Why fix something that is not broken? Ron felt invisible behind the character. He told the Mansfield News Journal in 1980 that ABC's unwillingness to really let him get into the production area as deeply as he wanted meant they saw him pretty much as Richie, nothing more. By 1977, at age 23, Ron was still pretending to be a teenager. Outside the studio, the world was on fire, culture was shifting. Protests filled headlines. People his age were questioning everything. But Richie stayed frozen in a nostalgic bubble. That disconnect ate at Ron every day, and the truth became impossible to ignore. If he wanted his voice back, he had to step behind the camera. Directing was not a dream for Ron Howard. It was an escape route, a way to finally breathe again. And the gamble he was about to make would either save him or destroy everything he had built. The escape behind the camera. Ron Howard later admitted he had to blackmail his way into his first directing opportunity. It started when legendary B-movie producer Roger Corman sent him a script called Eat My Dust. Ron thought it was terrible, a broad, zany car chase comedy with weak jokes and cardboard characters. But he knew Corman gave first-time directors chances. So Ron made a bold proposal. He told Corman to be honest. He had read Eat My Dust and it was not very good. but he knew Corman was the one person who gives first-time directors a chance. He asked Corman to read his own script and co-finance it. In exchange, Ron would act in Eat My Dust. Corman countered with an offer. He would not promise Ron would direct the movie, but he promised Ron could write an outline for another script if he acted in Eat My Dust. If Corman liked it, he would develop it. If he liked it enough and Ron was willing to be in it, Ron could direct it. If all that failed, Corman promised to let Ron direct second unit on one of his action movies. Ron took the deal. Eat My Dust became the first New World movie to earn $5 million in rentals, and Corman kept his word. In 1977, Grand Theft Auto became Ron Howard's directorial debut. He was just 23 years old. The budget was $600,000. He co-wrote it with his father, Rance. They filmed around Victorville, California. Variety called it the last word in the car crash genre, a non-stop orgy of comic destructiveness. The movie made over $15 million at the box office. The hits kept coming. Night Shift in 1982, Splash in 1984, Cocoon in 1985, which won Don Ameche a Best Supporting Actor Oscar. Willow in 1988, with George Lucas as executive producer. Ron described that film as feeling like graduate school and doctoral work combined. Then came Apollo 13 in 1995. Not just a movie, a mission. Ron wanted realism with no shortcuts and no fake drama. He experimented with wire techniques but found them incredibly limiting and uncomfortable. Steven Spielberg suggested investigating the KC-135, NASA's reduced gravity aircraft. Ron called astronaut Jim Lovell, who asked if he meant the Vomit Comet. It was called that because it was really uncomfortable. NASA initially said no, but Jim Lovell intervened. He asked them to give these guys one test flight and just see if they could do it. NASA granted a 6-month lease of the KC-135. The cast and crew flew 612 parabolas. Each parabola provided approximately 23 to 25 seconds of weightlessness. They filmed over 13 days across a 4-week period. The result was approximately 4 hours of weightless footage. When Buzz Aldrin saw the film, he was so impressed he asked Ron about archive footage he had never seen. Ron told him none of that was archive. They did all of it. Aldrin then asked if NASA could have those new shots. Spielberg's reaction when told of the plan was simple. He said Ron was crazy. He never thought Ron would really do that. Apollo 13 won Academy Awards for Best Film Editing and Best Sound. It became the third highest-grossing film of 1995 with $355 million in global box office. Ron told CBS News about that moment of realization. When he knew his big dream was going to come true and Night Shift was a success and Splash was a success, and he got the job to do Cocoon, suddenly he was underway. He knew his name was rising up the lists. He was going to have a career directing movies until he screwed it up. But then he became intimidated and frightened. Suddenly, you have a lot to lose. When you are young and striving, it is all uphill and easier to climb. Then, when you get there and look around, the altitude is kind of thin up there. But while Ron was building an empire behind the camera, someone much closer to him was falling apart. And no amount of control could stop what was coming. The brother's keeper. To Ron, his younger brother Clint was not just family. He was proof that someone else truly understood the strange, exhausting reality of growing up under constant studio lights. Clint Howard was born April 20th, 1959. He has over 200 acting credits. He starred in Gentle Ben from 1967 to 1969, playing opposite a trained bear. He appeared in virtually every incarnation of Star Trek. He played Leon on The Andy Griffith Show, a toddler in a cowboy outfit offering sandwich bites to everyone he met. Most importantly, Clint appeared in 17 films directed by his brother, including Apollo 13, Cocoon, Parenthood, Splash, and Solo. Ron and Clint were raised side by side on neighboring sets, passing each other in hallways buzzing with cables and heat. Kids earning paychecks before they could spell their names, saying lines before they had any idea who they were. Clint later wrote that he and Ron were never in competition as siblings so often are. He looked up to Ron. Coming along second gave him a greater vantage point from which to watch and learn. Their father, Rance, would grab them and tell them they had a chance to have something really valuable. They had a chance to be brothers and love each other and be best friends for the rest of their lives. But as Ron rose to the top, Clint fought quieter battles, pressure, judgment, the grind of being known but never fully seen. Then came what Clint calls his dark decade. In their memoir, Clint revealed the painful truth. He said, it was not the business. It was not disappointments in the business that made him want to anesthetize himself. He simply enjoyed it, and it came back to bite him really hard. He only had probably 5 or 6 years where he was successfully imbibing and anesthetizing himself. He said he is very grateful that he did not die. There was a period when he did not even have keys to his parents' house in Toluca Lake, his childhood home, because they could not trust him in his behaviorally compromised state. He said he cannot blame them. He just could not wait to try to get out of himself, to escape from himself. Ron watched helplessly as his brother drifted further away. He later said that as Clint got worse, he knew they could not rationalize his substance use as recreational. He had seen examples in show business of its effect on your survival. At Super Bowl 14th, Ron confronted Clint with a pivotal statement. He told his brother it is one thing to use substances and another to let substances use you. According to the Saturday Evening Post, Ron felt guilty because he did not realize how much trouble Clint was in. He has been described as feeling partially responsible for his brother's addiction. The intervention worked. Clint chose recovery, chose life. Clint later said that as good as Ron is as a director, he is an even greater older brother. Ron helped him a lot, and so did their parents. They even went to AA meetings with him. Ron said he appreciated Clint's candor and honesty. One of the most constructive aspects of their book is recognizing what Clint navigated. His journey to sobriety probably made their parents prouder than anything any of them achieved in front of or behind the camera. In 2024, Clint landed a role on CBS's The Bold and the Beautiful, playing Tom Starr, a homeless man who turned his life around. Art imitating life. But decades later, a new fear entered Ron's life. One he could not outwork, could not plan around, and could not yell, "cut," to escape. When control fails, Ron Howard has experienced profound loss throughout his life. His mother, Jean Spiegel Howard, died on September 2, 2000. The memoir reveals she likely suffered from OCD and health anxiety that she kept hidden from most people. His father, Rance Howard, died on November 25, 2017, at age 89. The cause was heart failure complicated by West Nile virus. His second wife, Judy Howard, had also died earlier that same year in January from Alzheimer's. Ron tweeted a tribute saying he and Clint had been blessed to be Rance Howard's sons. He stood especially tall for his ability to balance ambition with great personal integrity. A Depression-era farm boy whose passion for acting changed the course of their family history. Clint admitted that after their dad died, they were orphans. He does not do dying parents very well. He went numb and does not believe he really grieved properly. And when that was happening, it felt good to see his big brother writing the book, with Ron felt like a good way to honor their parents. Through it all, Ron found stability in his marriage to Cheryl Howard. They met at John Burroughs High School in Burbank. Their first date was November 1st, 1970. They married on June 7th, 1975. In 2025, they celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary. Ron said simply that he met her and there was never anybody else. When people ask how they did it, Ron says, "There is no technique. There is no tactic other than communication is really important. You have to learn to communicate and have difficult conversations in constructive ways." Cheryl appears in a cameo in every film Ron directs. He calls her his good luck charm and says he has become superstitious about ensuring she appears. Together, they raised 4 children. Bryce Dallas Howard became an actress and director. Twin daughters Paige and Jocelyn. Son Reed, who became a professional golfer. But even with all this stability, Ron could not escape the reality that control is always an illusion. Just as he began slowing down, prioritizing family over endless shoots, life hit again. News about Rob and Michelle Reiner shattered the calm. Ron was already processing decades of loss, and then came the headline that stopped everything. Rob was not just a peer. He was a mirror. Loud where Ron was quiet. Fearless where Ron was careful. But driven by the same truth, the same fire, the same need to tell stories that mattered. When Ron spoke after Rob's death, his voice carried weight it never had before. He did not talk about films or awards. He talked about love, family, and how fast everything can change. In January 2025, discussing the LA fires, Ron reflected on catastrophe and human nature. He said we are living in a time around the world where these catastrophes strike. We always recognize them. We always say that is too bad. And when they hit you, or very close to you, you feel it on another level. That is just the human experience. He said now more than ever we need to remember that when people come together for the greater good, we can make a positive change in our shared future. And for the first time, the man known for control had none left. Only regret, and the heavy weight of words that were never spoken. Mirrors and unfinished conversations. As weeks passed after Rob Reiner's death, a quiet tension followed Ron. Not anger, not blame, regret. Their relationship had always carried layers. Respect mixed with something unspoken, admiration mixed with distance. 2 giants walking parallel paths, never colliding, never fully closing the gap. Consider how similar their journeys were. Rob Reiner played Michael Meathead Stivic on All in the Family from 1971 to 1979. The show was #1 in America for 5 consecutive seasons. Rob won 2 Emmy Awards for Outstanding Supporting Actor. But he was typecast so badly, he once joked that he could win the Nobel Prize, and they would write Meathead wins the Nobel Prize. He said he wears it as a badge of honor now. Just like Ron with Richie Cunningham, Rob had to fight his way out of being seen as just a TV character. Rob transitioned to directing with This Is Spinal Tap in 1984, a revolutionary mockumentary where all dialogue was improvised. It changed comedy forever. Then came Stand By Me in 1986, which Rob called his favorite film. The Princess Bride in 1987. When Harry Met Sally in 1989. Misery in 1990, which gave Kathy Bates an Oscar in the only Oscar-winning Stephen King adaptation. A Few Good Men in 1992, with that immortal line about handling the truth. Turner Classic Movies host Dave Karger said he would put Rob up there with Ron Howard and Steven Spielberg as far as filmmakers from the 80s and 90s who made a string of films that have endured as people's favorites. But their styles could not have been more different. Ron Howard works within the lines. Rob Reiner redrew them. Ron delivers excellence across established genres. Rob altered what those genres were allowed to be. Ron is diplomatic and composed. He once said he is not a person that flourishes in an environment of conflict. He has learned to cope with hot situations, but it is not something he finds stimulating. PBS American Masters quoted Rob acknowledging this pattern of TV actors becoming directors. He said subsequently, "You have seen a lot of people come out of television. Ron Howard and Penny Marshall and Jim Brooks and Gary Marshall and Danny DeVito. A lot of people have come out. But in those days, that was not the thing. They were pioneers together, even if they never fully talked about it." Ron once told Time magazine about Jim Henson that he had this kind of restless creativity that was great for all of us. But it put a lot of pressure on him, and he remained a wonderful guy. Everybody loved Jim, yet he was never satisfied with himself. Ron said he could relate to it a little bit as a creative person. You are never quite reaching your highest goals necessarily. He could have been talking about Rob. He could have been talking about himself. In the end, two men, different styles, same fire, one careful and composed, the other loud and fearless, both trying to make meaning out of chaos, both shaped by fathers who guided them, both escaping the trap of being typecast, both building legacies that will outlast them. Ron Howard is now 70 years old. He has directed over 30 films, won 2 Academy Awards, built Imagine Entertainment with Brian Grazer into a company that has grossed over $15 billion and earned 47 Academy Award nominations. After seeing these tragic parallels, share your thoughts in the comments and tell us what stood out to you most.